I came back from a 3-week work trip to find an empty space where my car used to be. The garage door was wide open, the tire marks still fresh on the concrete. At first, I thought it was stolen. But when I checked my messages, there it was, a text from my wife, Megan. Sold the car. Don't freak out. You'll understand later. She'd transferred the money, $28,000, to her private account, the same one she once swore didn't exist. Then she blocked my number. My name's Ryan Keller, 38, project manager for a logistics company based in Dallas. I travel a lot, sometimes for weeks at a time. Megan used to complain about it, saying she felt like a single woman in a half-empty marriage. I thought it was just loneliness. Turns out, it was preparation. When I saw that text, I didn't call her, didn't message, didn't beg for an explanation. I just stared at the words, sold the car, and felt something inside me go quiet. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was focus. Cold, surgical focus. I replied with 2 words, all good. I didn't write anything else. Because when someone betrays you that deeply, the worst thing you can do is show them emotion. Emotion is currency, and I wasn't giving her any more of mine. The next morning, I contacted my bank. She tried to access our joint savings account while I was flying home. Denied twice, locked on the 3rd attempt. I'd set up 2-factor authentication months earlier. She didn't know. I moved everything out, savings, investments, retirement, and parked it all in a separate trust under my name only. Then I started tracing the money from the car. She'd wired it to an account in another state, under a name I didn't recognize. That night, I checked our home cameras remotely. She was gone. Half the furniture missing. Jewelry, electronics, gone too. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. I sat in a cheap motel room off I-20, drinking bad coffee and scrolling through our security footage frame by frame. The last video showed her loading boxes into the back of a black SUV driven by a man I'd never seen before. Tall, mid-40s, confident. The kind of man who looks like he's used to getting away with things. She wasn't just leaving me. She was cashing me out. Most men would have exploded. Called her. Called the police. Started begging for answers. But I didn't. Because I already knew what my next step was. And when she saw what I did next, she'd understand why silence can be more terrifying than revenge itself. She thought she'd taken everything. But she hadn't seen the one thing I'd built for situations just like this. I wasn't built for chaos. I was built for structure, for plans. That's why Megan's betrayal didn't break me. It activated me. Before we got married, I'd been in cybersecurity. 5 years at a private intelligence firm that handled corporate leaks, digital fraud, and insider threats. I left the job when she said she wanted a more stable husband. I thought I was giving her peace. But the truth was, I'd just gone to sleep. Now I was awake again. From the motel, I opened my old encrypted drive. Inside were programs I'd written years ago, tools meant to track online behavior and financial movement across linked accounts. Nothing illegal, just highly efficient. Within 2 hours, I'd found a pattern. The mystery account Megan sent the car money to? It was connected to a man named Brad Connor. Realtor. Divorced. Lived in Austin. His business website listed a smiling couple in the About section, Brad and his partner, Megan. She hadn't just left me. She'd rebranded. That realization didn't sting. It focused me. I spent the next night combing through their public life. Photos at open houses. Weekend getaways. Even a charity post of them smiling beside a sold sign. My car, in the background. I knew then that this wasn't about love. It was about leverage. Megan was using my assets to launch her new life. Money, furniture, even the car. She thought she'd erased me. But she'd forgotten who built every system she'd ever used. I logged into her laptop remotely, using a backup password she didn't know still existed. Within minutes, I had everything. Emails, messages, transaction records. The pattern was clear. She'd been siphoning money for nearly a year. Small transfers from joint funds, timed around my business trips, hidden under fake utility payments. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even feel tired. I was calm, detached. Every step I took had purpose. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Told them I needed a week to deal with personal matters. Then I drove to Dallas, to a quiet office park where an old contact of mine, Eli, a digital forensics consultant, still worked. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he owed me a favor. When I told him what I needed, He looked uneasy but didn't ask questions. He handed me a small black device the size of a thumb drive. "You plug this in," he said quietly. "It mirrors everything. Emails, files, accounts, even deleted data. You'll know everything." I nodded. By sunset, I was parked outside Brad Connor's house, the same SUV in the driveway. The car that used to be mine gleamed under the porch light. Megan thought I'd disappear quietly, but she was about to learn what quiet really meant. I waited until the neighborhood went dark before moving. Every light in Brad Connor's house went off around 11. I'd been watching for hours, memorizing patterns, when they talked on the porch, when they locked up, even how long it took for the security light to fade. Years of corporate surveillance work had rewired me to notice everything. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. The air was warm, heavy with that Texas humidity that sticks to your clothes. I moved like I used to during field audits, calm, silent, invisible. I wasn't breaking in. Not yet. I just wanted proximity. When I reached the back of the property, I saw my car again. My old Mustang. The one I rebuilt with my father before he passed. Its license plate was changed, but I'd recognize the custom rims anywhere. Megan had sold my memories, not just metal. That night, I didn't plug in Eli's device. I wasn't ready. First, I needed access. For that, I had a different tool. Years ago, I'd installed a backup tracker app on Megan's phone, a hidden one tied to our shared Apple ID. She'd never found it. Now, as I opened the dashboard, her phone's location appeared within 5 feet accuracy. She was home. Same bed she used to share with me, now with someone else. I should have felt rage. But what I felt was something deeper, confirmation. The kind that replaces anger with purpose. The next morning, I drove to a small cafe in downtown Austin. Neutral ground. From there, I logged into her email, downloaded copies of her correspondence with real estate clients, invoices, and legal documents. Brad and Megan weren't just partners in romance. They were partners in fraud. They'd used my financial records to secure loans under her name, claiming she was still married. My income had been leveraged to buy properties she co-owned with Brad's shell company. 6 transactions. Over $500,000 tied to my credit. I didn't print anything. Paper leaves trails. I backed it all up on an encrypted drive and stored a duplicate in cloud storage. Then I sat back, breathing evenly. They thought they'd stripped me of everything: money, pride, trust. But what they didn't understand was that betrayal is just another form of information. And information, in the right hands, is control. That night, as I drove past their house one last time, I said to myself quietly, all good. Because by the time I was done, Megan would understand exactly what those words meant. I started my morning with a black coffee and a clear goal. Every operation begins with a baseline: intel, timing, leverage. Megan and Brad had built their new empire on mine. So the first step was to trace how deep the roots went. Through her emails, I found out she'd filed a separation request with the court 3 days before selling my car. Not a divorce, just a quiet, strategic separation. The kind that freezes assets and grants her temporary control over shared property while the other party, me, is conveniently out of state. She'd planned it perfectly, but perfect plans crumble under pressure. That afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office in Austin, walked in wearing a plain suit, carrying nothing but a thumb drive and a calm expression. I requested a copy of the separation filing, public record. The clerk hesitated, then handed it over. I thanked her and left. In the parking lot, I read it twice. She'd claimed emotional neglect, cited long absences, claimed I'd left her financially unsupported. She'd even attached falsified bank statements, showing missing funds from our joint account. The irony almost made me laugh. I knew what I had to do next. Back in my motel, I started building a timeline. Every transfer she made, every message, every transaction. I organized it like a mission file. When you're betrayed, emotion clouds logic. But data cuts clean. I found something unexpected buried in one of her draft emails, an attachment labeled Client Form, Brad. It wasn't a form. It was a document linking Brad's company to an offshore account in Belize. Megan wasn't just part of a scam. She was laundering for him. I saved the file, backed it up, and sat still for a long time. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't personal anymore. It was criminal. Around midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. My car, parked outside the same cafe I'd used that morning. A message followed. You should stop digging. I didn't reply. Instead, I powered down the phone, removed the SIM card, and smiled to myself. They'd noticed me. That meant the pressure was working. They thought they'd found a man to manipulate. But what they'd really done was wake a man who'd spent a decade studying how people destroy themselves. And Megan was about to start doing exactly that, one quiet step at a time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark motel room with the curtains closed, my laptop glowing on the table. Every sound outside, car engines, footsteps, the hum of the vending machine, felt amplified. But inside, everything was quiet, focused. I replayed the message in my mind. The photo of my car. The warning. It told me two things. First, they knew I was close. Second, they were scared enough to try intimidation. That meant I had leverage now. At 3 a.m., I opened a secure portal I hadn't used since my intelligence days. It allowed anonymous data drops to journalists, law enforcement, or private legal networks. I wasn't going to use it yet, but I prepared the upload, documents, emails, offshore records, the fake statements Megan filed. All time-stamped, verified, ready. Insurance. Then I did something simple but effective. I sent Megan one message from a new number. All good. No threats. No explanations. Just that. It landed like a knife between her nerves and her conscience. Within an hour, I saw her location ping 3 times on the tracker. Home, then Brad's office, then back home again. Panic makes people move in circles. The next morning, I dressed neatly and went to meet Eli again. I told him I needed his help making a legal copy of my findings, something admissible in court. He didn't ask questions this time, just nodded. He'd seen that look in my eyes before, the one people get when they stop reacting and start executing. By noon, I had a hard drive with everything I needed to end them both. But revenge wasn't the plan. Exposure was. Silence was. In the afternoon, I called the Texas Real Estate Commission from a payphone. I told them, in a measured voice, that I believed one of their registered agents was using falsified income documents to obtain property under fraudulent pretenses. They asked for names. I gave them Brad's. Then I hung up. That night, I watched the news online. Nothing yet. It would take days for the investigation to surface. But the seed was planted. Before midnight, another message came through my new number. This one from Megan. Ryan, please. Stop whatever you're doing. You don't understand. I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I typed one word. Understood. And that's when the real unraveling began. By morning, Megan's message was still unread on my phone. I didn't need to reply. Silence was the loudest response she could get. The less I said, the more she would imagine. And imagination is a sharper weapon than truth. Around 9, I drove into downtown Austin, parked near Brad's office, and watched from a distance. He arrived first, walking fast, phone pressed to his ear. Megan showed up 20 minutes later, sunglasses on, moving like someone trying not to be recognized. They didn't greet each other. She followed him inside, head down. Whatever mask they'd built together was cracking. I went to a diner across the street and opened my laptop. News travels fast in real estate circles. Brad's brokerage website was already down. Someone had reported him to the state commission for documentation irregularities. His license was under review. Exactly as planned. I ordered coffee and waited, scrolling through her emails one last time. That's when I found something I hadn't seen before, a thread between Megan and a contact labeled R. East. The emails were encrypted, but one subject line stood out. Transfer confirmation, Belize. Another followed. Funds received. Keep quiet. She wasn't just helping Brad. She was cashing in for herself. She'd already transferred her cut offshore, preparing for the fallout she knew was coming. That told me one thing. Megan was planning to disappear. By afternoon, I was sitting in the parking lot of her apartment complex. I hadn't planned to see her, but I needed confirmation. When she finally appeared, she wasn't the woman I married. She looked thinner, nervous, scanning every corner like she expected a shadow to move. She froze when she saw my car. The rental, not the Mustang. I didn't step out. I didn't wave. I just sat there, watching her realize what quiet pursuit really feels like. She took a step toward me, then stopped, her phone lighting up. I could see her reading a message. From me. I'd sent it seconds earlier, scheduled to deliver exactly as she spotted the car. It said, "You sold everything, but you never owned peace." She stood there for a long moment, then turned back inside, moving faster. That was the last time I saw her in person. From that point on, Megan would only meet the consequences she'd built herself. And I would just keep watching, in silence, as her world quietly collapsed. When I left that parking lot, I didn't feel victory, just precision. Everything was moving the way it should, quietly, inevitably. People like Megan and Brad depend on noise. They rely on chaos to hide the cracks. But I'd taken the noise away. Now they had only silence, and silence amplifies guilt. That evening, I drove back to Dallas. I needed distance. I wasn't hiding, I was waiting. Control doesn't come from chasing, it comes from patience. I knew it was only a matter of time before the fallout began. 2 days later, it started. The Texas Real Estate Commission issued a temporary suspension on Brad's license, pending investigation. His company accounts were frozen. Local business forums were already buzzing about questionable transactions. I didn't have to leak anything. The system had taken over. Then came the call I'd been expecting. It wasn't Megan. It was Brad. He left a voicemail that started polite and ended desperate. He said he didn't know how I'd found out, that he'd been misled, that Megan was the one who orchestrated everything. He wanted to meet, to talk it out. I didn't answer. I just saved the voicemail and sent a copy to my lawyer. Not that I needed representation yet, but having one ready was part of the plan. The next call came from Megan herself. She didn't sound angry anymore. She sounded scared. She said they were being audited, that the authorities had frozen the Belize transfer, that investigators were asking questions about forged documents. She said I needed to help her fix this before everything burned. I didn't respond. I simply forwarded the call transcript to a secured folder and archived it. She was spiraling, saying too much, too fast. That was good. By the 4th day, her tone shifted completely. She begged. She said she'd made a mistake, that she'd been manipulated, that she didn't mean to hurt me. Her words came out in fragments, panicked and clumsy. I still didn't answer. Not because I hated her, but because silence had become the language she understood best. Every second she waited for a reply, the walls closed in tighter. That's what people like her never grasp. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It's the steady tightening of order around the chaos they created. And when it's done right, it leaves no fingerprints. Only quiet. The message came early, 6:14 a.m. Megan again. "Please, Ryan. I'll meet you anywhere. Just talk to me. I'm scared." No punctuation after that. Just silence. I read it twice, then put the phone face down on the table. Fear had finally replaced arrogance. That was progress. By then, the media had started circling the real estate case. A quiet headline in a local paper. "Austin Realtor under investigation for financial misconduct." They didn't name Brad, but the description fit him perfectly. The story would grow. They always do. I spent the morning walking by the river, no plan beyond observation. That's something the military teaches you. Watch the environment before you engage. I'd done enough. Now the world would finish what I'd started. At noon, James called. He'd traced the offshore transfers. "Your ex's account in Belize has been frozen," he said. Federal authorities moved faster than I expected. She's not officially charged yet, but she's under review. Her boyfriend's assets, too. I didn't respond immediately. I just listened to the sound of the river moving around rocks. Steady, calm, irreversible. "You got what you wanted," James added. Maybe time to let go. But this was never about wanting. It was about restoring equilibrium. Megan had built her peace on deception. I was just adjusting the balance. That night, I drove back to my motel. As I parked, I noticed a car I didn't recognize across the street. Black sedan, windows tinted, no plates visible. My instincts sharpened instantly. I waited, motionless, watching. After 10 minutes, it pulled away. Nothing dramatic. Just a warning, someone was still paying attention. I packed my few things and checked out quietly, leaving no forwarding address. I'd been a ghost once before, in operations that never existed on paper. I could do it again. 2 days later, I received a new message from Megan. "I can't sleep. They froze everything. My accounts. Brad's. The brokerage is gone. They're saying it's fraud. What did you do?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer and deleted it. My silence wasn't cruelty, it was closure. By the weekend, the story had broken wide. Local couple implicated in real estate fraud scheme. Photos of Brad, blurry and cornered, plastered across news sites. Megan's name appeared second, then vanished after legal edits. Damage control. But reputation stains deeper than ink. Sunday morning, James texted again. They'll probably subpoena you for testimony. You'll be fine. Everything you did was legal. I stared at his message for a long moment, then typed back. I know. Because that's the thing about precision. When you plan each move quietly, you never have to break the law. You just let truth do the heavy lifting. Megan had played her game loud. Lies, manipulation, appearances. I played mine in silence. And silence always wins. The subpoena came on a Wednesday. Thin envelope, official seal, no surprise. They wanted my statement about Megan and Brad's financial operations. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in my drawer. I already knew what I'd say, and more importantly, what I wouldn't. By that point, the story had evolved from a headline to a scandal. News anchors said words like embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. They called Brad a prominent real estate figure and Megan an unnamed associate. That phrasing meant one thing. Her lawyers were negotiating. The night before my testimony, I walked along the empty streets near my new apartment. I'd moved quietly, signed under a different LLC name, no digital trail linking back to my old address. The city lights reflected off the pavement, sharp and cold. I wasn't celebrating. There was nothing to celebrate. I'd just corrected an imbalance that never should have existed. At the courthouse, I waited in a narrow room with beige walls and no clocks. A clerk entered, polite but tense, and said they were ready for me. Inside, the air smelled like paper and fear. Brad sat at the far end of the table, hands clasped, his confidence dissolved. Megan wasn't there. I didn't ask why. The attorney across from me began with basic questions. My name, my work history, my relationship with the defendants. I answered each one slowly, clearly, giving them exactly what they needed and nothing more. When they asked about the documents I provided, I confirmed their authenticity. When they pressed about my involvement, I told the truth. I had simply traced the money. I hadn't altered, fabricated, or interfered. I had observed. After 40 minutes, they dismissed me. Outside, the investigator caught up, lowering his voice. You know, he said, most people in your position would have gone after them directly. I told him I didn't need to. Consequences have gravity. They fall on their own. 3 days later, the court filings became public. Brad faced multiple counts of fraud. Megan had turned witness, trading testimony for leniency. Her statement included everything. How she'd funneled my money, falsified documents, lied about ownership. She'd saved herself by burning everything else. I read the article twice. Not out of satisfaction, but confirmation. They say revenge is a storm. But that's wrong. Revenge isn't thunder or lightning. It's erosion. Slow, quiet, relentless. And when it's done, all that's left is the shape of what used to be. The day the verdict came down, I didn't watch the news. I didn't need to. I already knew how it would end. Brad was convicted on multiple counts: wire fraud, money laundering, falsified records. Megan, as predicted, walked with probation and community service. Her cooperation had bought her freedom, but not peace. That's something no plea deal can grant. I spent that morning in the workshop behind my house, sanding the edge of an old oak table. My hands moved automatically, the grain smooth beneath my palms. Building something from raw would always felt cleaner than rebuilding trust. It doesn't argue, doesn't lie, doesn't vanish in the night with your car and your savings. It just becomes what you shape it into. Around noon, I checked my phone. There was a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. I lost everything. Are you happy now? No signature, but I knew the rhythm of her words. Megan still thought happiness was a currency, something you could take, spend, or owe. She'd never understood that peace isn't something you win. It's something you stop giving away. I didn't reply. Later that week, I met with my lawyer for the final paperwork. The divorce was clean. Assets restored. No drama, no noise. He asked if I wanted to pursue damages. I told him no. Some debts are best left uncollected. He nodded, said I was one of the calmest clients he'd ever seen. I told him calm isn't natural, it's earned. In the months that followed, I rebuilt quietly, sold the house, bought land on the edge of town, started a consulting firm again. Nothing big, nothing flashy, just steady, reliable, my own. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever trust again, ever start over with someone new. I always give the same answer. Trust isn't the issue. Selection is. One evening, I took a drive to clear my head. Same route I'd driven hundreds of times before. As the sun dipped behind the hills, I passed a used car lot. Parked near the back was a silver Mustang, my Mustang. I pulled over, just sat there watching it, the paint still shining under fluorescent light. I didn't go inside. Didn't ask for the keys. Some things are better left as ghosts. When I got home, I poured a drink and stood on the porch, the night air quiet around me. Everything was still, balanced. Megan had used silence as a weapon to block me out. I'd used it to build something stronger. In the end, she ran from the noise she created. I walked away from it. And that's the difference between losing everything and starting over clean. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.